very excited to introduce today's session, not only as the host, but as the facilitator of this webinar. And this webinar is called Youth Awake, Aware and Arising to Lead, or Arise to Lead. You can choose which one. And I am joined by a panel of, at the moment, we've got 6 or 7 young people. Some people have problems with connection because we are all from over the world. Sometimes the internet, unfortunately, does us a bit of an injustice and doesn't allow us to join, but we do have quite a big panel here. So I am Leah Black. I am the youth program lead for Coach Arya. I'm also the founder of the youthmentorcoach.com, and I've been working with young people for about 15 years now, or more. I forget every day, I'm getting a bit older. And I've run different projects all across the world, mostly in the UK, but also in Uganda, Zambia, Kenya, and I've also worked in Ecuador, mostly on youth mentoring programs, youth coaching programs and training. I've also worked a lot in education, and I'm extremely passionate about core life skills, communication skills, being introduced into schools all over the world, because I think we play a lot of emphasis, or put a lot of emphasis on subjects, maths, sciences, and so on. These are very important, but we miss out a lot on the human element, the development element, that is all absolutely imperative for us to succeed, and especially as leaders. And here I am with a group of amazing, aspiring young leaders. And I would love it if you could all introduce yourselves, if possible. If we start off with Isaac in the corner, that would be brilliant.
So hi everyone, my name's Isaac Alwode. I'm 25 years old, currently based in England where I was born. My occupation, so I studied aeronautical engineering at university and I currently work in aerospace. So at the moment I'm on an operations leadership graduate scheme whereby I rotate around various different departments. And so joining this actual development program, the reason I joined was because I wanted to learn a bit more about myself. I wanted to develop skills that I have and enhance them more. I'm very much motivated by learning. And then also I wanted to learn from a diverse group because I had a feeling that it would be a very broad range of people from all different walks of life. So I think it's an amazing opportunity that I've been given to be on this program, to be able to learn from all sorts of different people. So very much looking forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Isaac. And Natnael, you're next on my screen. But before you introduce yourself, I should say all the young people that I'm joined by today, they're part of the youth leadership program at Coach Arya that started 3 weeks ago. So yes, these are the several that put their hands up to help today. So Natnael.
Hello everyone, my name is Natnael Aklog. I am 24 years old. I am based in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. By profession, I am a legal professional, recent graduate, and I also volunteer in many NGOs and work with different youth organizations. The reason I joined this youth leadership training is because it was like a next step in the journey of my own leadership training, and more to find myself in a way, to find my identity, to find my passion, and most of all, to meet people from different cultural backgrounds and network and learn from others as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And Claudia.
Hi, everyone. I'm Claudia Laxtana, and I'm currently just outside of London. I'm 21, and I've just completed my theatre and art drama degree. And why I wanted to do this talk and be on the leadership program was because I think it's so important during a time of isolation, especially, that I am connecting with people still, and I'm still kind of stepping forward and pushing myself. I really want to learn and improve my skills I have as a leader and learn from other people as well.
Thank you, Claudia. And Jane.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jane. I'm from Kenya, and I'm the next president of Kenya. I'm 24 years old. I have a bachelor's in economics and finance, and I practice freelance data analysis. Why I joined the youth leadership program? It's mainly because I wanted to learn how better to communicate and also to understand others. I also wanted to learn how to inspire and to motivate my fellow youth in my country. Also, the other thing that will have to be that I'm looking forward to changing the difference in how we do leadership in my country. And how about the change to be me? So I'm glad to be with you guys today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jane. And Sharanya.
Hello, everybody. My name is Sharanya Balasubramanian. I'm from India, but I live in Dubai. And I'm 18 years old. I'm a fresher at a university in India called OP Jindal Global University. The reason why I joined this program was because I want to be able to be my own leader. Firstly, that's priority. I want to be my own leader, and I want to be able to shape India or shape my own country, shape the world to be a better place. Give everybody the opportunity to be the best version of themselves. That's my priority. So that's my goal.
Thank you. And Cassidy, last but not least.
Hi, my name is Cassidy Turner. I am also 18. Right now, I live in the United States, and I'm also from the United States. I am an assistant preschool teacher, but first and foremost, I'm a student. I go to a local community college, and I joined the youth leadership program to enhance what I already have, but also to get to meet new people and explore new ideas and hear what everyone else has to say. And yeah, just to have a good time, really.
Thank you, Cassidy. And Ram, we know you're at the bottom there in the corner. So hello, Ram. And so we are all going through really interesting times. And I'm a strong believer that young people not only are the future, but they literally are the future, the hope of our future. And through my time working with young people, I have seen a shift. And I can't quite explain that yet. And maybe you'll see what I'm talking about by the end of this webinar. But the time feels like it is now, like people are ready for a change. That pondering about change can't keep happening. Change needs to happen. So I would like to present the first question to the panel as, why now? Claudia.
I think more than ever before, it's so important to use this period of isolation and the global pandemic that we've had, but take it and make it a positive change, make it a period of transition that elicits change, especially in our generation, because I feel like so many of the young people today have had to step forward at a time where perhaps they wouldn't have had to before. And as we step into the limelight, I think it's really important we support people to do that in the right way and give people the right resources. And for us, being on this course, it has been about leadership. And I think that's really important, that everyone knows that they can be a leader, everyone has it in them. I think especially for me during this time with drama and theatre arts, I mean, the industry has kind of collapsed, but it's really, I've had to dig deep, and I'm sure so many people out there have. So I think we just have to be shaped by the events of today, but make it a positive change for sure. Thank you.
Thank you. So Isaac, why now?
I think one of the biggest things, one of the biggest sayings actually that I've come to know for a number of years is being the change you wish to see. And I think that's such an important thing to stick by, because if you yourself enhance change by, say, encouraging people to see what you want to see, then others can be inspired. And I think that's a big thing that we have right now. Claudia had already mentioned about it being the pandemic and people already sort of ready for change. And I think a lot of young people have seen that there's not maybe many job prospects for them to see in the future. And I think it's a time and period whereby they should be encouraged to look at the skills that they have through other leadership programs like this as such, and to be able to enhance themselves and actually reflect and see that what skills do I have? What can I improve on? What can I bring to society? Because there's many things people can bring. And I think as young people, as well as you yourselves that are listening to this today, there's many different opportunities that you have to be able to encourage people and help themselves to see that there's so much that they can bring to the world. And I think those are the big things as to why now that is an important thing to raise. Thanks.
Nicely put. And Claudia and Isaac, you both mentioned about job prospects and that being quite a challenge at the moment. So I'm wondering what everyone else thinks about the challenges and why now on the panel. Cassidy.
I think, speaking along job prospects and everything, young people nowadays are faced with a lot of responsibility a lot sooner. And, giving them the tools to succeed as early as possible is really important. And also recognizing that we put all people, but especially young people, under a lot of stress, and finding a way to balance that with all of these responsibilities that they have now is a really important priority also.
Absolutely. And I know from talking with you before in our sessions, mental health, with all the current things that are going on, has been mentioned quite a few times as a priority as well, that stress that's put on you and the lack of job opportunities, etc. And I'm wondering, I'm going to ask the question again, but what else is there? Why now? Why now? What about the opportunities? Why now? Natnael.
Well, I think you mentioned it earlier. There is a kind of a shift that is to be felt all around. I mean, as a world, we're moving from the current age to a new information age. Opportunities are abundant, although the current pandemic did hamper most of our jobs and most of our opportunities. Going forward, the future is there is a possibility, or there is a chance for it to be very great and a very bright future. And that is if we work together and if we develop ourselves, So technically, why now is because we're at a very opportune moment, especially for the youth, to have these discussions and move forward for a better future.
This is so well put by all of you. So we agree that now is the time, and that self-awareness and development of young people, for you to be able to bring out those leadership skills, is really important. And as a coach myself, and as someone that's taught personal social health education and other things with young people to help them develop, I've noticed a lack of core life skills, communication skills, leadership skills, confidence, all these different things in the schools and centres that I've worked in. Now, I know there's been improvements since I was in school. When I was in school, there was nothing. I mean, we literally learned nothing. Sex education was the biology teacher who was extremely scared, and that was pretty much it. We didn't get taught anything about how to communicate effectively, to be able to succeed in our jobs once we left, to be able to have positive relationships, to be able to make an impact on this in this world. So based on your experience, what would you recommend that teachers or educational institutions do to implement these type of skills and prepare young people for the world of adulthood? Cassidy.
This is one of the issues that I'm most passionate about. So of course, you have to go first. I definitely think that there's a lot to improve in how we teach kids, but I feel like the biggest thing would be emotional intelligence and being aware of, how you're feeling and to cope with that in a healthy way, because I feel like a lot of young people suffer from depression and, depressive symptoms and things. And it's really important that we talk about that at a really young age, because it happens at a really young age. And a lot of schools don't talk about it ever. So I think talking about it at the very least is a really good starting point.
Thank you. And Claudia next.
I think Cassidy has a really good point. But just going on from that, I think it's also talking to people and breaking down the stigma behind you don't just have a mental illness to talk about things. Everyone has to talk about their feelings. Everyone should deserve to see a coach or a therapist. I think there's this stigma behind that you can only see them if you have problems. But I think it's making sure everyone is looking in. And like you say, Cassidy, starting that from a younger age, rather than getting to 16, 17 and suddenly everyone going, oh, I think I have a problem, or I think I feel sad today. When actually, if we make it, you know, we talk about it more at a younger age, I think it just becomes the norm and people can handle it far more.
Really well said. Totally agree. I mean, why do we even have to think about teenage years? You know, we can think much younger, age 8, younger. And these are emotional intelligence I hadn't even heard of until I was an adult. And, you know, it's the number one thing as well that I would teach now in youth leadership programs. So like yours. So I'm wondering, Jane and Sharanya, you both had your hands up. Can I say Jane goes first and then Sharanya, if that's okay? Thank you.
Yeah. So the other thing that I would like to be introduced in our schools will have to be entrepreneurial skills learning at an early age, because I do understand that the reason why many are depressed and demoralized is because they lack the jobs. And if they were taught at an early age on how you could scale up your idea, on how you could develop it and do design thinking, maybe at a later stage, you will have already made up on your mind on this is the business I want to start, this is what I want to do. And the challenge of mental health in the long run will not be there. So yeah, so I think entrepreneurial skills are very key in advancing one's mental state. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Absolutely. And entrepreneurial skills is something I've not seen taught either. So there's another one to add onto the list. Thank you. Sharanya.
So a lot of us nowadays, we're exposed to so much of information, so many opportunities, so much. There's just abundance of everything. But we do not have, because we're put under stress, we're put under different situation, and change is constant. It's going to be it's the norm. So we're not able to deal with situations. We're not given the resources. We're not given the platform to be able to vocalize how we feel. And I think talking about it is the very first step towards being a leader, being an entrepreneur, doing anything. It's bringing the conversation first, and then we can really break a lot of stigmas. We can really, the kids nowadays will be able to deal with everything that's going on better.
I really like that. And I think how do we implement that conversation? How do we start these conversations in school? You know, whose responsibility is this? I think they're questions as well to ponder. I personally think it's everyone's responsibility. I mean, we have a responsibility to protect children and to protect young people. Yet if we don't give children and young people the skills to be able to speak out, to share their voice, to know the difference between rights and wrongs, then we're putting people in a bad situation. We know that there are massive challenges in this world at the moment that actually I believe leadership and coaching skills could help. They could help bridge these gaps, definitely. And Isaac, if you could go next, that would be great.
Sure. I think a big one for me is self-awareness, which has already previously been mentioned. But on top of that, it's allowing young people to look at their own skill set. So through personality tests, which we've already done recently. I've done this quite late. I say late, I've probably done it around 18, 19 was probably the first time I'd seen what sort of skills I have and whether
Has the screen frozen for everyone? Okay, so it isn't just me.
Have I frozen?
Sorry, Isaac, we lost you for a moment. It's good. It's kept us on our toes. Yeah, you're going to have to start a little bit in.
That's fine. I'll start again. No worries. So what I was saying was about self-awareness and sort of looking back on yourself and allowing young people to do their own their own personality tests, if you like. Because the first time I'd done it was when I was around 18, 19. Whereas I think a lot of young people should be given the opportunity to do it from a younger age so that they can see what sort of skills they have and whether they're introvert or extrovert, and understand that they're own unique. Everyone has their own unique abilities, and everyone has
You're keeping us on a cliffhanger here. Isaac, I'm going to jump to Natnael for a second, and then maybe if we can reconnect with yourself, that would be brilliant. Thank you. Natnael, have you got anything to add on to this topic?
Yes, quite a lot actually. I'm very passionate about this thing as well. And I think the most important thing for me to improve our education system is to move from memorization based to creation based education, because the education that we're receiving now, it's basically memorizing facts and repeating them in standardized tests, and then we pass or fail based on our memorizations and not our spark or creativity or who we are in a way. And that is one thing that I take very seriously, and that's one thing I want to work on going forward. But it's more than that. Recently, I saw a video on YouTube and Twitter as well about the schooling system in Finland, and I was very jealous. They have a very amazing system where, you know, students don't learn anything until they're 7 or 8. I mean, they don't start formal education. They just take them to school and, you know, until they're developed. And also teaching is held in a very high regard, whereas in many other places, including here, teaching is a sub-job kind of thing. You know, the title teacher doesn't have that much of a regard compared to other professions as well. So we need to change that perception. And more on top of that, we also need to make the curriculum more holistic, as my other panelists have been saying, because as I've said, it's more memorization, and students are given the chance to identify themselves, identify their strengths, their weaknesses, and what they want to work on in the future. I mean, when you, especially in my country, when you grow up, you have few options where your parents will be proud of you, or else it's like you failed in life kind of a thing. And there's a stigma. So in 10th grade, we choose between social science and natural science, and natural science is highly encouraged as opposed to social sciences. And this shouldn't be the case, because each student has their own gifts and they should be able to pursue what they want without any pressures whatsoever. So I think a lot needs to change in our education system. Our education system is currently from the past, but the world is moving forward and it needs to move forward with it as well.
That was a real insight. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I like the way that you say the world is moving forward. And it's like that first question, why now? Because the world is moving forward and we need this. We can't stay in our old ways. Old ways don't help push people or movements or anything forward. Thank you. That was really good. And I'm just going to go to Cassidy, and then Isaac, we will reconnect with you. Thank you.
Really quickly, Natnael like sparked something in me that I mentioned earlier, but want to bring up again. The world is moving forward, definitely. And I feel like a part of that is being interconnected with people from all different countries and walks of life. And I feel like our education should reflect that. Where I live in America, we have a different system of measurement. And we learn how to convert things and stuff, but it's not really normalized until you're in a really higher level of science and math where you need like the metric system and stuff. And I feel like that's just one very small example of how we've kind of chosen to isolate how we like learn about things. I feel like a lot of students don't take another language. A lot of us just learn English and then like maybe Spanish at some point. I feel like it would be nice if we could bring other worldly ideas into our classrooms, as opposed to them being more stigmatized for only the people that are really smart. You know what I mean? Like only the people that are at the very advanced levels can handle another language or the metric system. And I feel like that's not necessarily how it is. I know a lot of people who know multiple languages and are just fine. So I feel like just bringing that interconnectivity into our classrooms and trying to learn about other cultures just as much as we learn about our own. Because I think it's really interesting personally, but it could also really help people, I think, for sure.
I absolutely agree. It is very interesting, and it would help, and it would break down barriers as well. And we live in a world where young people are basically global citizens, and I know we'll probably touch on this in a bit, but what are we hiding from? Why aren't we teaching the world? And it's interesting that you mentioned about languages. If only I'd had some good language teaching, it would have prepared me for ending up marrying a Spaniard, and then my level of Spanish is really bad and now I live in Spain. So all these things would have helped, and that's not the only example. You know, in the past when I've had really bad relationships, it's how do I deal with these relationships? Things like the question, what is love? What is consent? How, as you know, how can I be bold? How can I be assertive? None of this is taught to us. So I think that's really an interesting point as well. And Isaac, we're going to attempt to connect with you again. We did hear everything up until that point when we said you'd cut off.
Okay, that doesn't really remind me where I finished off, but what I can say is that personality-wise, I think people should be allowed to see what personality they have, so whether they're introverted or extroverted. And from a young age, if they can see this, then they can be able to establish where their strengths and weaknesses lie. As I was saying possibly before, you may have heard it, that everyone's unique, and everyone needs to be able to see, I think from a young age, that it's okay to be different from your peers. It shouldn't be compared to the same yardstick, as I think Cassidy as well had mentioned, as Natnael. I think the one that also strikes with me is you can't judge a fish to climb a tree in the same way as a monkey. There's that saying that goes that not everyone's the same. So I think those are the major things, that allowing people to see what skills they have from a very young age, and so that they don't fall into any sort of depression that there's no hope for them, because there's always hope for everyone.
Thank you. I'm glad your connection was perfect then. Thank you. And I like that saying. I've not heard it before. So you have a lot of sayings, actually. I stole one of your sayings from the class last week as well. Thank you. And okay, so I've just mentioned we're global citizens now. In a world that's moved online, what is social media's role in changing the lives of younger generations? Thinking moment. I am going to jump in on Jane, if that's okay.
Yeah, so I think that social media, first of all, during this COVID season, the power of internet has really come out. And it has been clear that through internet, we have been able to meet, to mingle, even though it is e-meeting. So I think the power of internet has really done us great as the youth. How do I see this? Because we have youth who have gone online and tapped into the online businesses. I also saw a youth who broke a world record in doing many courses, I think 300 and something courses online. I think that's an applause. We should celebrate that. Yeah, during only these few months of the pandemic, you can imagine how much you can do with social media and with the internet. Yeah. So also another thing that the youth can do is that they can push their agendas. They can do activism. Call out your friends. Tell them, you know, like in my area, one of the things that we did when Corona things were open for a little bit, is that we organized a cleanup, an area environmental cleanup. And because we couldn't share the information about this activity through the word of mouth, what we did is we did a poster, placed it on Facebook, on WhatsApp, and all these social media pages. And voila, we had more than 200 youth coming in. We also had the support of the government, who gave us a truck, yeah, that carried all the waste that we could come up with. And imagine, only that one day, we managed to collect up to 10 tons of waste, and also educated the people around about the waste management, environmental sustainability issues. So yes, I think the power of internet, especially the social media, is a great platform for the youth to move their agendas. Let's use this internet for our good. Yes, it's a very big monster. It can eat you. Yeah, it can be bad, it can be good. Let's use it wisely. Thank you.
Jane, thank you. You made some really good points there. So very, very good point. And I've got to admit, 300 courses during the lockdown online. If any young person is watching this during the next lockdown, this is your opportunity. You cannot get bored with the internet when you could do 300 courses. Claudia, thank you.
I think it's so inspiring hearing all the positive things it can do, definitely. But I also think we have to be aware of the negative side of it and how we do integrate it into society to make sure it's being used in the right way. Because kids are getting phones at the age of 5, 6. I don't know how young it gets these days, but so young, and they're open and exposed to so many different things. So I think something for our generation, it really is going to be a battle against technology. I think we need to make sure it doesn't take over. It doesn't almost, even though it's allowing us to connect, we don't disconnect at the same time. So I just think we have to be really careful of this balance. I mean, we've spoken as a group before about Social Dilemma, the documentary on Netflix, and I just think it is raising the awareness to the harm it can do, making sure we're not a product of it, but we are in control of it. Yeah.
Before I come to Cassidy, Claudia, I wonder if you have any recommendations around how to control that social media usage for other young people out there.
I think that's really tricky because I know that I am involved with it as well. I see it every day. I've got a screen time to make sure that, tracks the amount of time on my phone, all that sort of stuff. But I think it's kind of accepting that and not being in denial that it is here. It's with us. It's in our world. And it's giving it the power it deserves, whilst also saying, okay, guys, it's time to put the phone down now. And I know that is easier said than done. I think, again, we will need to work with our education system and just make sure we're working together. Like I said before, it's not about being disconnected. We have to connect to each other. I don't know. I'm unsure.
I think that was really good. That's still guidance, what you've just said. And also, it's not easy. And everyone will probably feel the same. It isn't easy. I mean, for someone like me, I did not grow up with the internet. I remember the first day that I got internet. I was 18, sitting in college, and they told us there's this magical thing that you need to log on to. And we ignored it for about 2 years because we just couldn't cope with it. So I think we got an email address and that was it. And actually, because of that, I have at least 1 or 2 internet-free days a week. And that I can't stand here or sit here now telling anyone, oh, have a day without the internet, because it's just not possible. Or if it is possible, it's really difficult for the younger generations. So Cassidy, I'm intrigued. You jump in now.
Yes. I was just going to elaborate on a little bit of what Claudia said. I definitely think that, and I guess Jane said this as well too, I definitely think that social media is a very touchy place. You want to use it because it helps connect everyone, but you don't want to use it too much. And I've seen personally that the best way, I have a lot of younger sisters and they all are on social media now. And I've seen in my own life that the best way to make sure that everyone's safe is just being really open with them, telling my sisters hey, I've been there. And if you need anything, I'm 100% here for you. And I feel like that's all we can really do aside from, education, obviously teaching kids what's safe, what's not safe, who to talk to online and who probably you shouldn't talk to online. And, I feel like something that's really come up lately is, how we get our information, news and things, and making sure that we're fact checking our sources and not just trusting things because they're on the internet, which I feel like we all fall victim to sometimes, absolutely. But, you know, teaching young people that it's okay to ask questions and it's okay to be unsure sometimes, and that it's always good to, you know, use all of your resources and to make sure that you're being as safe as possible, which is sometimes easier said than done again. But that's kind of, I think, in my mind, the simplest way that we can make sure that we're all using social media to the best of what it can do.
Cassidy, I couldn't agree more. Absolutely. I feel like clapping on the other side of the screen. I couldn't agree more. And that's something that I've kind of been preaching to everyone, is ask questions. There's a human element behind technology. Ask those open questions, make it safe for young people to speak. Not only will that help us with technology, it will help with our relationships in general. So if young people, and your sisters and siblings are very lucky to have you to be able to bring this into their lives, but not all families and not all schools are this open. And actually, that one tiny thing that Cassidy has recommended is key. Have conversations, use open questions, don't presume, you know, just ask, how are things online? You know, what's going on? You know, you can speak to me. I imagine it's difficult. All these things, and have good conversations. Thank you, Cassidy. I've got Sharanya. I know if you could go next, and then Isaac. Thank you.
Sure. All the points that Claudia, Cassidy, and Jane had put out were perfect, spot on. And actually, I was reading this book by Yuval Noah Harari, and it's called 21 Lessons for the 21st Century. The book gives out it opens your eyes. It gives you the insight that I have never expected. And it's really shedding light on what the social dilemma is, the documentary. And it basically just says that, it basically just says that before we even know ourselves well, we're influenced by social media, because it's really, before we don't even realize it, but it's actually shaping the way we think. Our perspectives are unknowingly changing. It is reaching at a very subconscious level. So we don't get to know ourselves, or they can shape our minds the way they want it to be. So I think it's very crucial that we all obviously pick up conversations. We sort of have the balance, like Claudia said, we have a balance between the virtual world and the real world, because there's only a limitation of how much we can do on the virtual world in terms of connecting with people, truly connecting and being human. So we should really take forward those, we should be able to, connect really deeply. And we could use these opportunities for the better. That's it.
I love, do you know, that topic on connection, we could talk about that for an hour, because there's connecting online, and then there's actual human connections and what's happening there. So thank you so much, Sharanya. Isaac.
I think the biggest challenge for young people at the moment as social media changes, and I'm sure many of us would have heard it, is that for young people not to be defined by what they see online. So they often see the best of whatever they see through influencers and all sorts, but see that they do not have to live up to those expectations. Again, I've mentioned before about how everyone's unique and has their own skills. But on top of that, I think people should understand that there's highs and lows in life. We've all gone through highs and lows, each one of us, but social media at times can skew that. And I think it can be difficult for young people to understand that it doesn't have to be always all rosy. There's importance in seeing that. But I think the benefits as well with social media, as many have also mentioned, is obviously the accessibility of information, being able to connect with each other. All of us here are connecting quite well with each other through social media, through LinkedIn and all sorts. And I think it's using that in the best possible way to ensure that people don't feel like they can take the bad thing they may have read online into their normal, regular life, talking to people day to day. So I think those are the big things there.
Isaac, that's such a good point. And actually, I know, having spoken to a few people in the older generations, they'll be like, oh, young people can't communicate nowadays, they can't socialize, the internet's stopping this. I actually disagree, and I have proof of this now, having met all you at 26, 28 of us, all meeting for the first time, and that level of communication was fantastic. We're all speaking to each other, you're on LinkedIn speaking to each other, and I actually saw a confidence online with the way that you communicate that I don't usually see in person as much. So yeah, it's actually really, really good. I don't see the problems with the internet stopping communication. Yes, okay, people are talking a lot more online than they are face to face. However, during COVID and lockdown, might have been a good thing, you never know. And I don't know who had their hand up next, but I do know Natnael. Yes, Natnael, we've had a conversation about globalization before, amongst other things, so I'd love to hear your perspective on this. Thank you.
Yeah, well, my perspective, I mean, basically everybody covered it already in a way. Social media is a double-edged sword. You can use it for good, and it also has bad effects, as clearly indicated by the social dilemma. Personally, when I was growing up, I've never heard of the term cyberbullying. Here, I've had internet when I was in late high school, I can say. So I also grew up without social media impacting me at a younger age. But nowadays, people here are talking about cyberbullying and all the other things as well. And even globally, we saw some of the negative sides of social media, like in Philippines, where, people are being being told to riot in a way, and all that as well exists. So it's what Isaac said in a way. You see people's highlight reels online, not their bloopers. So we set higher standards, and we set our standards of beauty or whatever it is to those things that we see online, as opposed to what realistically exists, and that is quite a bad thing for the youth and also for the grown-ups as well. We saw that social media can slowly alter your behavior, or and that could be weaponized. That's a very dangerous thing. So the thing that we need to work on is encourage being open-minded and introduce logic at a younger age, so that we can fact check, as Claudia said earlier, or was it Cassidy? I think it was Cassidy. Fact check everything that we read online, and be logical about the things that we read online and that we hear about online before actually believing them and acting out on them.
Thank you, Natnael. And it's interesting, you just triggered an experience that I had in the past. Online, so cyberbullying, online bullying is like someone can be hidden behind a wall, and the intensity of bullying is much, much stronger than in person. They're hiding behind whatever that is that they think is in front of them, and they're very cruel. And I've seen through my work, teachers, schools, centres, etc., being overwhelmed with how to deal with cyberbullying, how to help young people, and sometimes there are devastating effects of cyberbullying. This is real. In my experience, prevention is better than cure. If we can start teaching these instead of reacting and actually put this into the curriculum, not only would it make things a lot better, but could even save lives. I mean, I feel that strongly about it. So yeah, thank you. Thank you for triggering that. And okay, my next question. On a really positive note, I'm quite excited about this question. How would you like to use your leadership skills in the future to make a positive impact on this planet? Now, we've got people watching from all over the world, so feel free to mention the resources that you need, the support that you need to help you on your leadership journey. And yeah, go for it. Who would like to go first? Cassidy, thank you.
Starting a trend of starting us off here. I would really like to be a teacher someday, and that's, a really local impact for me, but leadership is definitely a really big thing in teaching, being a good leader, as I can probably attest to, you know, being a good leader and leading by example is really important. But on a more grand scale, I definitely think that as young people, knowing how to put our voices out there, knowing what to say and who to talk to, and really just knowing that we have a voice at all, is incredibly powerful. Because, you know, just like we're doing today, hearing us talk, you know, hearing it directly, you know, from us is really important. You know, I could absolutely have my mom post something on Facebook, but that's not nearly as powerful as me posting something on Facebook. And I think, you know, really the resources that we need to do that is just being open with each other. You know, it's not about money. It's not about how much power you have or anything like that. It's just about communicating and opening your mind to other people's ideas. And even in my own life, my short 18 years, I've noticed that that's really helped me a lot. So, you know, just imagine on a larger scale how much that could benefit people. I think that's a really interesting and inspiring thing to think about.
Well, thank you for sharing, Cassidy. It is inspiring to think about. And for anyone watching this, you know, how can you enable young people to have their voice heard? What could you do? Isaac.
For myself, it's about diversity in the workplace. At the moment, I'm part of actually an employee resource group in which we're looking at diversity through ethnic minorities as well as through gender. Again, it's amazing for us to see the diverse cultures we have first on our group right here, but it's in case of encouraging that more in the workplace. And I think as a future leader, or hope to be a future leader, I think the biggest skill is sort of treating people how you'd like to be treated. Because I think a lot of the issues that we have in the world span from that. If you were to treat others how you'd like to be treated, and that's actually thinking honestly in yourself. If you were to look yourself in the mirror and say, would you be happy if that was happening to you? I feel that there's a lot of issues in the world that wouldn't be here right now. And I think a major case of educating people, which we are being given a platform for, and being able to speak out and allow others to hear our voice and also to be able to respond, because I think it needs to be a two-way conversation. So I think those are the major things that I'd like to tackle, and I am actually part of a group in which we are looking at that.
That's so good to hear. I'm happy you're part of that group and you're doing amazing things to change, you know, this world step by step. And when you mention diversity as well, online, again, we were talking about that before, but online we bring people from all over the world together and we're learning about each other's cultures. I'm amazed on the youth leadership program. We have young people from literally everywhere. Literally, we've got people from Latin America, from different countries in Africa, Europe, America, India, everywhere. Literally, there are so many of us, and slowly but surely, in fact, preferably quickly, this will start helping break down a lot of barriers that have been put there due to these lack of conversations, due to lack of experience, due to beliefs that are extremely oppressive, that I can see with the hope of young people like yourselves are going to break down very soon. Claudia.
I think for me, something that's really close to my heart, and I'm sure to everyone, because it's become a problem that we all need to solve together, is the environmental issues. I think our generation are really awake to the challenges that we face in protecting our planet and saving humanity. I think that we've kind of been forced to realize actually we're going to do better and we're going to save our world in the wake of what the past generations have kind of put on us. And I know, and that's quite depressing really when you think about it, but we have to stand up and be leaders at this point in time. And so I think it is really admirable seeing all the, I mean, before COVID happened, all the environmental protests that were happening all across the UK, certainly, where children weren't going to school and they were protesting. And then you've got someone like David Attenborough, who's 92, who has protested all his life and doing it even more so now. And I think I'm asking for the people in the middle the people with the power, or I don't know, people in the middle to listen and change. We need a change in legislation and kind of target the big corporations. I mean, there's so much to do, but I really think that our generation hopefully can step up to it, because I believe in us.
I absolutely believe in this generation too. Thank you, Claudia, for putting that so beautifully. And shout out to David Attenborough. Yes, you are an inspiration, mine too. Thank you. And okay, who next? Jane, would you be okay to go next?
Yeah. So I think Claudia has brought up a very good issue. Environment is key, and we all have to take care of what we have for our future, for the future generation coming in. So I think it's a high time that we stop debating on whether there is climate change or not. Let us see that there is a need for us to do something, and it has to start with us. So with myself, I have been organizing community cleanups, but I have not yet registered it. So as an initiative. So it's something that I would like to do, register it up. We have been cleaning up, picking up bottles, plastics around my area. I live in one of the environmentally most polluted regions in Africa. I think it's a high time that I am part of sensitizing the community on importance of us cleaning up the environment, and more so segmenting the waste from the household level. So that's where I would like to take my environmental activism to. So mobilizing my youth and teaching the community on importance of them having 3 garbage bins in the house. Yeah, it's very important. I would like, if someone is watching this, you could provide us with resources, the garbage bins, yeah, so that we can give them to every household. Also in how we take care of this environmental garbage, such as the plastics. I have read online that these plastics are normally cut into small pieces by Petco companies. So this is a knowledge, if you are out there and you have ways on how we could better manage this garbage and this waste. I am also calling out to you to reach out to me so that you could also share the knowledge on how to better deal with plastics, and also how to transform the waste that is in organic form into fertilizer and into compost manure such that we can sell it. So yeah, basically that around the engineering systems on how to do garbage collection better. Yeah, so if you have money also, fund us for our activities. We normally do our cleanups every month, once per month. Yeah, if also you have the time, you can show up. Come to Africa, I'll give you a place to stay. You'll have the full African experience. So yeah, thank you.
Jane, when we can travel, I'm there. and Jane, you just reminded me of a talk there that I saw a long time ago, actually, where it's when you're talking on things like this, on webinars, there will be someone somewhere in the world that has those skills and those talents and that knowledge that we need. So I ask if there's anyone watching this, a leader, maybe you're a current leader, what is it that you can do to help these young people? What, even if it's just helping one person or a small group of people, you don't have to think massive. Just a tiny little thing has a massive ripple effect. So anyone who's watching this, when you leave, please ponder on that question. What can you do to help the next generation, no matter how small or big? Okay, I've got Sharanya and Cassidy. Sharanya, could you go first? Then Cassidy. Thank you.
So as a person who's I'm studying BA Honors Economics. So in economics, our foundation of today's economics is based on capitalism. It's based on the idea that every human being has a selfish intention. Everybody wants to be there. Everybody wants materialistic. They want to be on the upper hand when it comes to materialistic items. So I feel like we should start thinking differently, because we have our resources, our natural resources are running out. We are experiencing a whole different set of issues because of capitalism alone. It's brought us a lot of pros. It brought us a lot of benefits. It's brought us a lot of abundance in something that technology is a blessing in disguise. It's all because of capitalism. At least if not all, it's contributed. Capitalism has contributed to a certain degree for technology, but we are seeing a whole different set of problems because it's not controlled. So I feel like instead of trying to find, like, we should try to look at our economics, the way we see our economies very differently. And I'm very passionate about how we could, start looking at our people instead of money to be our growth of GDP. We could talk about our welfare instead of domestic product. We should start looking at things in a different light, I feel, so that we can really solve these very crucial problems that we all are talking about today.
Nicely said. Look at people in a different light. Look at people as that area for investment. Thank you, Sharanya. That was really good. And Cassidy.
Jumping back to the environment, because that's also something I'm really passionate about. Jane brought up, sustainability and waste management, and that just made me think of, I watched a documentary years ago in school, actually, and it was called Before the Flood, and it's super good. You guys should watch it if you haven't already, but it's very nice. And in it, they talk about how our food impacts the environment. And personally, I'm a vegetarian, which is super fun. But I've done a lot of research into, what we eat, because where I live in a big city, there's quite a bit of poverty and a lack of, food, and that really shouldn't be the case. And again, where I live in America specifically, just as a whole, a lot of our food tends to get wasted because people are really particular about what they buy in grocery stores. I saw a statistic that said that, like, we won't buy a head of broccoli unless it's between 1 and 3 inches wide, which is super strange. But as a result of that, the broccoli that doesn't fit into that category gets thrown out or wasted because farmers aren't going to pay to ship it somewhere if they're not getting money for it. And to me, that brings the idea of, well, how do I get that food that's otherwise edible to people that need it and don't care what size the broccoli is? And, with that, I feel like world leaders should probably be considering the same thing, because I know that hunger is a really big issue in the world. And it would be wonderful if we could take some of these things that we're otherwise wasting and distribute it in a way that could help a lot of people. And also, while I'm talking about it, fishing methods are really unsustainable. And I heard about a wonderful thing called aquaculture, which is basically just fish farming. And that's another really good way to use waste, because whenever you farm things, they produce waste, and the fish waste can be used to fertilize farms and stuff. So it can be a whole greenhouse, I see a lot of nods, a whole greenhouse effect, you know what I mean? They can, farm the fish and eat the meat and then use the waste to fertilize farms, and the water to irrigate farms and whatnot. So I think stuff like that's really important to consider, and something that I would like to use in my own personal life, but that I think, all of us could benefit from knowing a little more about.
Thank you, Cassidy. Natnael, I'll come to you next. Just, you got me thinking of something then. The first thing is, doesn't it sound silly when we're listening to the size of broccoli this day and age? I mean, when you're talking about it, I do think of when you go to the supermarket and everything looks perfect. I mean, if it was from my allotment, I'd be in trouble because they're definitely not the right size and half of them are broken. But I mean, silly things like this, where does that mindset come from? Again, I think education's got a lot to play in this. But when you mentioned about the sustainable farming of fish, I saw, it wasn't even a project, it was a practice, and I can't remember where, and I was sitting here trying to think. It was a country in Africa, so it was either Kenya, Uganda, or Zambia, because I went very close together, and they were using fish skin. So after eating the fish, using fish skin to create products. So I literally think what I saw was the making of clothes or shoes or bags or something. So waste nothing. There's no reason for us to. So thank you, Cassidy. Natnael.
Yeah, well, if I was given all the resources, the thing that I would work on is being a teacher, just like Cassidy's ambitions, I'd say. So why I want to work on this is, personally, I believe I am the result of what my teachers taught me throughout life. Teachers play a very important role in the upbringing of children, and they play the important role in shaping who people are ultimately in the future. And I believe that most of our problems currently we face have a root cause in education, be it in environment or racism or anything. I mean, you go to environment and you have people denying the science, you have racism where people are, not being open-minded, or it's a product of how they were raised, and it's technically not themselves, but the situations they passed through. And there is this saying by, I think it was Frederick Douglass, who said it's easier to build strong children than to repair broken men. So I mean, I know that we should do all we can to change the current challenges that we're facing, but I would more focus on being a good teacher, just like some of the best teachers that inspired me and made me who I am. I'd like to give that back to my community and inspire others as well. So the thing is, if we have better education systems, we can bring out better people who are compassionate, open-minded, all the adjectives. And I think that going forward, that would be an awesome solution to most of our problems.
Thank you. Natnael, I'm going to ask you a question. You sparked something. What makes an inspiring teacher?
Well, it depends. I think it depends on the person. Some of my inspiring teachers were ones who encouraged me to think out of the box, ones who inspired me to read early on. Especially here, language was a big problem for me growing up, and I had one specific teacher who is the reason that I can speak English this well. I also have others who opened my mind to new views and opinions, and some who gave me some of the important advices that I consider as personal values. One important advice that I got from a teacher was when I was just about to graduate. He advised me to try anything and everything, but not let anything control you, which is something that helped me a lot in college regarding new experiences and everything. So being a good teacher is someone who understands their students and who tailors their teaching ways to their students' needs. And I can go on and on about what a good teacher is, but so far I think this is what I got.
Thank you. I'm actually wondering if anyone else has any experience of inspirational teachers to share with our audience, because there might be some aspiring teachers or teachers out there who would like to hear this. I know I had a very bad experience in school, and actually there were no teachers that I looked up to and didn't get that support, and it was a tough time, except for one teacher who was my biology teacher. And he came up to me one day and he said, Leah, you have a real talent in biology. And just those kind words at that one point was enough for me to kind of put down the front that I always had and that anger I was holding on to. And I said, oh, thank you, cheers. And he bent over backwards to mentor me. He took me to nature reserves. He taught me all the extra information I would ever need to be able to get into university, bearing in mind my results weren't very good. And there was nothing too much that he said. It was just showing that interest. But I'll never forget him, because just showing interest in itself to me was what I needed to be the person I am today. Whereas all the 40 other teachers, I'm sorry, they made absolutely no impact. So be that nice biology teacher. So yeah, is there anyone else who would like to share any experience? Isaac, thank you. And then Claudia.
For myself, it was actually during college, a teacher that very much saw some skills that I had in terms of, saying, having a career in engineering, which I've then looked to pursue. As at that time, I had various opportunities or different things that I wanted to go into, but engineering was a big one for me at that time. And he sort of cultivated an enthusiasm more to see that in the future I could be, say, a captain of industry, which is not what I am, say, right now, but I look to aspire to be that. So he definitely was one, not to even just encourage myself. A lot of us within that class, he looked to see that we can actually excel and succeed, and we've been given a great opportunity to study, and we should take that. And it was someone that really struck well with me there.
Thank you. I love the personal stories, because telling stories inspires others. So Claudia.
I think for me, it was, I was doing my A-levels, psychology, and what struck me about this teacher was she was just so human. She just was herself in the class. So there are a few times where she was having back problems, and there was one time where she came in and she took the whole class laying down with a pillow behind her back. And she'd be like, sorry guys, we need to go and take the call, da, da, da. And I think it just really, she respected us, we respected her, and it was just this kind of equal partnership that was going on, and she opened herself up to us, and we did too, and it really stuck with me. Yeah, it inspired me.
Thank you. Do you know, some of the best teachers I've ever met when I've worked in schools have been themselves, have been authentic to who they are, not trying to embrace the role that comes with being a teacher and taking that as power, but instead of taking it as power, as taking it as I'm sharing it with you, and I'm just going to be me, and hopefully inspire you to be you. Thank you. Cassidy.
I have a couple experiences, but my own that I think was the most powerful. My junior year of high school, I had a English teacher, and I've always loved English, but I had an English teacher who was supposed to teach 2 years because it was an international baccalaureate or an IB class, and those are generally 2 years long. But she ended up moving on to bigger and better things, as she said. But she was inspiring because she was just a real person, like we've been talking about. And in that class, the majority of the time we wrote essays, and a lot of times they were like creative and very personal essays. And we laughed together, we cried together. I mean, that class was a very emotional roller coaster of a class, but it was really cathartic to be able to, you know, have a group of people that you respected enough and trusted enough, and students included. I mean, I had some wonderful students in that class also that I was really good friends with, but to have a teacher facilitate that sort of interaction was just wonderful. Like, I never had that in the class before, and she's honestly who inspired me to want to be a teacher myself, which is crazy because it was only like 1 year of class with her, even though it was supposed to be 2, but it ended up being wonderful. On the flip side, my youngest sister, who has given me permission to share the story, she started her period when she was like 10. So she was in elementary school. And she had one teacher who just would not let her go to the bathroom, wouldn't let her do anything because she thought she was like a bad kid or something because she had to use the restroom a lot. And I can't even imagine having a teacher that didn't respect you enough to let you use the restroom, and who didn't trust you just as an individual to let you make your own decisions. And I mean, she was 10, and I can see where the stigma might come from, but that's kind of where we've been talking about, you know, don't assume things and just try to communicate with people. Because had she just sat down and asked my sister, like, hey, what's going on? She could have told her, like, I have social anxiety. I want to go. Because my sister's always been a really self-aware person, which I'm incredibly proud of. But you know, like, I just need to go sit down for a second. I've got a lot to deal with. And, you know, that could have alleviated so much stress, but she didn't. And I see the effects of that every day. So I guess, you know, really just being a human being in any sort of leadership, but especially as a teacher, I think is one of the most powerful things.
Thank you for sharing, and thank you to your sister as well. And I think there's a really key message arising here, which is be you, be yourself. And actually young people respect that. Teenagers respect that. They're not going to play up to that. They're going to enjoy it and be at ease and build trust, and actually communicating. You know, as you said, if that teacher had only asked the question. Why do we find it so hard to ask questions? I don't quite get this, but anyway. Sharanya.
So I just like to, tell, like, there was a reason, like, how Cassidy had a teacher amazing enough for her to decide to become a teacher by profession. I had a teacher who was really, really amazing. Like, I studied science, and studying science as an Indian student, we are known to either being a doctor, or being an engineer. And for girls, it's usually a doctor. So that real strong stigma, it really brings out the pressure on someone, and the competitive exams, it's just really tight and really difficult to deal with. So I was a student who always loved talking to people. I loved going and doing debates. I loved playing sports. I did all kinds of things, and I was totally held back. I felt it was a very tough, rough patch for me. And there were times I went to my absolute low when it came to my grades. And when grades came low, I'm a person who took pride in scoring well, but then suddenly things just turned south, and I wasn't able to deal with it. But she was a person who was there for a very small amount of time. But when she came and she was there for me, she totally had faith, like 100% faith in me. And she always heard out what I had to say. She never, ever, like, I was the most talkative person in her class, and I was the quietest in the other classes. But when she left, I was in a very dark place. And when she told me, Sharanya, I have complete faith in you, and I want you to go to LSE. I expect that from you, nothing less, because they're that amazing. And those words stick to me with me today, and I'm driven to be able to do the best I can. And it's just those type of mentors that have really shaped me to be who I am.
Thank you for sharing. Honestly, if anyone's watching, be one of these mentors, please. Just be you. And okay, my next question is, we've kind of touched on it, but I'd like to go a bit deeper, is how can young people get their voice heard? What can we use? How can people help? Isaac.
I think there's actually a few different options that young people can potentially have. I remember back in school, there was a thing called Youth Speaks Out, run by Jack Petchey Foundation at the time back in the UK, which I was briefly a part of. And I think it was encouraged for young people to speak about an issue that was quite dear to their heart, or something that at that young age, you're not sure, you might have many wacky ideas you want to speak out about. But I was encouraging them to see that there's ways of speaking out about them. I know now as we come into a more modern day, there's social media they can use and the platform that they have to be able to speak out. But I also think as well that once you have an idea, that if you are able to, you should also speak out about it with your friends, or see other people that might also buy into that. Because if you can build a team around you to make it a bigger thing, I think if you're able to have numbers within your cause, then obviously it stands a better chance of actually causing a bigger impact. All the world leaders we have now today in various spheres, they were one way or another able to show to other people and have other people buy into their idea. And I think if we're going to make a change, young people need to be able to see that they can be a fire starter in their little sphere in one way or another. Talk about it with your close mates. They may agree with you, they may not, but at least if you've asked that question, you can see, along with other people, teachers, some of the mentors we've spoken about, speak about it with them, have a bit of confidence just to speak about something that you feel might be dear to your heart. So yes, that's what comes to mind for me there. Thank you.
Thank you. And Cassidy, before we jump to you, Jane, is that okay? And then to Cassidy. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you so much for the question, Leah. So yeah, I do think the youth have many platforms on how they could get their voices heard. Take, for example, myself. I'm a musician. I love music. Music and me, we are one. You can say that. So with music and with the talents that the youth have, they can use them to speak out what they see needs to change. We have a musician in our country called Giuliani. He has sung about corruption. He has spoken and he has been so forthright and spoken to the leaders and told them, you know what, the citizens are going to come up, it's going to be an uprising. So, you know, we can use the talents that we have, the music, the art. We can use so much, drawings. We can use even simple gatherings whereby we just do social, like for example, the last weekend we had a social meetup for the youth whereby we were discussing on corruption and how best can we affect the policies in our countries. And it was shocking enough that the youth in our country, some of them don't really understand that corruption really does hurt them in a way or another. So yeah, I think it is about us coming together and using what we have, speak out, use your musical ways, use, if it is graphic design that you know how to use, do a graphic design poster, a really nice one, explain to people on the effects of the issues facing society, put it out there on the social media. We have so many avenues that the youth are empowered on, so let's use them to change the society. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Very powerful. Thank you. Cassidy.
Yeah, I feel like Isaac said, you know, communicating is really important in talking to your peers and your friends, and you know, kind of bouncing off of that. And also Jane touched on this too a little bit, but bouncing off of that, not being afraid of disagreements and discussions, and not having someone that agrees 100% with your ideas is a really good thing to remember when you're a young person trying to get your ideas out, because you'll face a lot of adversity and a lot of people that tell you, you know, like, oh, like, you're too young, what do you know, like, what? And you just have to be like, no, like, I do. And, you know, kind of prove that with your actions as well as your words. But, you know, when you're talking to peers, I find sometimes that friends that disagree with me are the most helpful. You know what I mean? Like, I want someone to be like, actually, no. And then I can, you know, hear their idea, and maybe I'll change my idea, maybe I won't, but at least, you know, I feel like I'll be all the wiser for having heard that. And then as, you know, as a leader or, you know, someone in power or whatever, giving people the opportunity to talk to you directly, I feel like is really important, because, you know, a lot of times debates, you know, just turn into like yelling at each other, or, you know, you talk over each other, then your message gets lost in all of that, whatever, chaos and dissent. And I feel like if you just took the time to talk to them instead of debating with them, you might learn a lot more. And I think that's something to consider as well.
Absolutely, Cassidy. Talk to them instead of debating with them. And you know how strongly I feel about that from our sessions. Thank you. Claudia.
I think mine is quite a simple point, but I think the way young people can get their voices heard is if the older generations listen. I think I'd just ask that people listen, because it's so important. People could be talking and actually just not being heard because they're not being listened to. So I think it's having the confidence and sticking with what you believe in and what you're saying, and having faith that it will be heard and the older generations will listen to us, because we can learn so much from each other and support each other. I think for me at the moment, trying to network on LinkedIn and just getting one message back from someone in a big company is just so massive for me. And that might take 10 minutes out of their day, but it makes my week, and it could drive me for 2 weeks on a certain path. So I really think it's asking the people above us to listen to us.
Thank you, Claudia. You've reminded me of something there, which was a conference that I watched last year or the year before. I've forgotten the title of it, but it was a very large youth conference. And there was a wonderful, inspiring young woman who basically said, nothing for us without us as well. So any projects, any programs, anything that's developed for young people, make sure you develop them with young people. Like with this, even the questions today are all led by you. You know, we've all come together and designed the content of the youth leadership program, of this, through surveys, through other things. Don't presume if any people who are teachers out there, or youth workers or leaders, don't presume you know what's right for the next generation, because as you can probably see from listening and hearing these amazing young people, there is a little bit more than I remember when I was younger to the generation now. This generation is epic, like literally, they're amazing. Anyway, I'm going off on one. Natnael.
Well, okay, so I want to bounce off on Claudia's idea that we are not being heard. I think the best way to fix this is to amplify our voices. The best way to be heard and to be, you know, to be heard, to be engaged and to actively participate in the decision makings and everything is by being active. I took a policy making class very recently, and the one thing that I learned there is that every individual voice matters very much, and one individual can tip the scales. So if we find something that we're passionate about, and if we start moving actively in our communities, we are bound to find a certain organization or a group of people who have the same ideas as us, and we can form up, and you know, the more we are, the louder our voices become. And I mean, young people make up the largest proportion of the population, I think, in most countries, if not all over the world. So we have that to our advantage as well. And yeah, I think that's about it. You know, be actively engaged in your communities and amplify your voices.
Thank you. And yeah, Natnael, remember everybody, they are the largest demographic and population of people in the world. So now's the time to have some shared responsibility and really hear what our young people of the future want, because there's more of them as well. Just before I go to Sharanya, I remember some projects that I did in the past that were quite successful, which was actually with schools that are set in their ways and they're not willing to change. Some of the most successful programs that I've seen delivered are peer education and peer programs where young people actually go, right, fine, if you're not going to do it, I'm going to do it. And the school's been willing to go with that, and young people have actually delivered assemblies, have delivered classes, have created peer mentoring programs. Some young people I worked with at one point to break down the gender imbalance. We actually had boys and girls all teaching each other about each other's lives and breaking down perceptions. It was fantastic. And drama, to kind of advance on what Jane said, drama as well. And Claudia, I know you'll like that one. It's amazing. Young people in the community, you can speak to 500. I remember in Zambia on International Youth Day, I did a program with young people and acting out different situations of the challenges that they face. And 500 plus people were watching. Imagine what impact that has. So yes, Sharanya, thank you.
You actually brought out one of the parts that I was actually going to explain about, and that was gender equality. And so we as a youth, we're coming out as the majority of the population. But I also feel like there's we haven't progressed much when it comes to equality. And I feel like both of genders have a huge role to play on how we deal with society in general. If we are able, women have their own perspectives to bring, men have their own perspectives to bring, we should sort of let them do that. We shouldn't put stereotypes that men should only be working and they cannot be they cannot contribute, they don't need to contribute to the domestic aspect. But it's the same way for women. Women should be in the workforce if they want to be in the workforce, and they should be given the opportunity to have their voices heard. So I feel like equality in gender and in general, in companies, in corporations, if we can allow our people, even at the lower end, the people, to give them the power to negotiate and have these discussions, have these important conversations. So
absolutely. I keep saying absolutely because basically it is absolutely. Right, we've only got now 6 minutes left. Before we finish, I know Ram has a comment to make, and then I would like to pose one more question before we close the session for today. So Ram, Pia, thank you.
Yeah, okay. I'll make my comment and probably pose a question and then leave. I mean, honestly, it's been a phenomenally delightful conversation. I totally enjoy staying with you and listening to many of the issues that you have talked about. One of the ironies that we all see today is probably for the first time in the history of civilization, all that it takes is a little thingamajig phone that can allow you to be heard in any part of the world. That's all it takes. But equally, we also find that's oppressive in some ways. Social media, technology, and everything that we talked about earlier, on the one hand, they have tremendous power to enhance our lives, enhance and remove all those inequalities that we see. People like Greta Thunberg and others have proven that to be true. But at the same time, it also has the power to bully you, troll you, burn you, do all those kind of things. So ultimately, as civilization proceeds, I don't think it's going to make anything easier for us. How much the technology enables us, it's also going to disable us in some way. The utopia is also going to be the dystopia in some ways. Whatever little I see over my years of experience is, and more as a coach, I see this, the root problem, 80% of the cases that I come across, work with, is invalidation. Everybody is looking for validation from others. Some of you mentioned it actually. I wish somebody would give me a message back and something would happen. As long as we expect someone else to validate us, we are at their mercy. We are their slaves. Slavery doesn't just stop with gender or race or religion or anything. It's in our minds because we are unable to free ourselves from our own limitations. So one of the things I would sincerely ask all of you to look at, what is it that it takes for you to validate yourself and help other people validate themselves as mentors to those people? I think that's probably many of you talked about that you would like to be teachers. I think the single most important thing a teacher should do, or any caregiver should do, or any parent should do, or any coach should do, is to help individuals empower themselves, validate themselves. So they do not need anybody else's words to either empower or disempower them. Even an ass like Trump cannot disempower if you are validated yourself. So that is true of most leaders. They are narcissists, they are psychopaths, they are sociopaths, many of them. And we live in a society which is horribly wrong in many ways. But within that society, as someone of you said, there are the Yuval Hararis and Otto Scharmers with Terry Yu, and all these people exist. And they are making their voices heard. So can you, each one of you. So I leave it at that and think about it. What is it if you had all the freedom, and the universe will give you the freedom? And those of you who haven't read, you should read Khalil, what's his name, The Alchemist, where the simple statement is the universe conspires to make things happen if you wish it to be so. That's true. That's what I have found in my experience. I keep repeating that all the time. So you just have to believe that your voice will be heard. And if it's not today, it'll still be heard tomorrow. And all that you need to do is to not stop speaking, not allow your voice to be heard. And you have technology and you have everything else to support you. And that's the only thing that we wish to do as part of Kucharya, to spread that word. So I think you are in great company with Leah. So I'm hoping that during one of the sessions that Leah has, I could come across and meet you guys in one of the sessions as well. And thank you very much. Bye. Take care.
Thank you, Ram. Ram, you are already booked in on a session. I just need to give you the date. And Paulo Coelho, The Alchemist, is on the reading list. It's a spectacular book, but the actual, what he says about the universe conspires to help us, I absolutely 100% agree. Thank you.
Khalil Gibran, The Prophet.
That's on there too.
Coelho.
We have matching book lists going on here. It's because you suggest them all. No? Thank you.
You don't have to go very far. Okay. Take care. Bye.
Thanks to Ram. See, mentors, they are good. They do inspire you. Bye, Ram. Before we all leave, I hope everyone has the patience to stay with us for just 2 more minutes, as I would like everyone on the panel just to say one message or one request from our audience, whether they're young people or of the older generations, and to finish with a question. And I'm going to wink at you all because you know what question that is. So I am going to start off with Natnael, please.
So yeah, we started this discussion with the question of why now. And I mean, we have so far discussed about many issues. I mean, why is it important to have these discussions at this time? And we have covered issues ranging from education to the environment and, you know, to what we should do and what's not. So the question that I would like to leave all our audiences and any young person watching this is, what now?
Thank you. What now? Isaac, what message do you have for anyone watching now?
I think that the leaders and whoever's watching this, whatever age you are at, I think that you should encourage your younger people to be able to first cultivate whatever it is they have in them, whatever talents they have, to be able to make the world a better place and to be able to change it. Because once they're given that little bit of encouragement, I know Ram was saying that you want people to empower themselves, but once they're given that little spark, a lot of people just need that tiny bit of encouragement to then be a self-starter in themselves. And I think that is the major thing that I would say, just to always look to encourage young people and see that they have their own individual talents and see it that way.
Thank you, Isaac. And I think Cassidy's dog wants to send a message. So Cassidy, what was your last message and the dog's?
Yeah, right. The dog's message is that she just needs to be a part of this right now. And I suppose my message would be to empower others as much as you would like to be empowered yourself. I think, you know, like you mentioned about validating and whatnot, if we all looked in the mirror, and I don't remember who said this, maybe Isaac, if we all looked at the mirror and wondered if we would like the treatment that we've received or that we've given others, and to go from there, I think the world would be a much better place. So yes, I would say to empower others and empower yourself too, because that's also equally important.
Thank you, Cassidy. Claudia?
I think we should just all take a minute to be proud, and all of this whole conversation, the fact we've got this much awareness and self-reflection, which I'm sure so many people out there do have, is amazing. And I think that sets us in such a good place for the future. So just enjoy the feeling of this shared purpose and collaborate, and have hope and faith that we'll do the right thing for the future.
Thank you. Sharanya?
We all have a place in this world. There's nothing that we can't do if we put our mind to it and we constantly try to work towards manifesting it. First of all, I just want everybody to be able to know that they have a voice, and you have the power to be able to be yourself. You have the right to be yourself. You have the right to express how you feel. And so I feel like we all be open-minded, and we should all just try to just be together, be united, be global citizens. So
Thank you. And Jane?
Yeah, so I'm going to retaliate what Sharanya has just said. I absolutely love what she has said, that it is time for us to do what we can do. Don't bet on others. Don't wait on others to change what you see that you can fix. Fix it. Bet on yourself. You are the best sure bet. Don't bet on others to do the changes for you. Start yourself. Also, I would like also to retaliate to what Leah had said before, that she had a quote of nothing for us without us. Yes, I do agree that it is important that for all the youth to be involved in any citizen participation project, We are the main dish. We shouldn't be the side dish. Thank you so much.
We are the main dish, we shouldn't be the side dish. Great ending notes. Thank you to all of our panelists, all the participants watching. This should not be the end. This is the start of something really, really amazing. And it's not just about young people being the hope and having all this responsibility on their backs. It's about all of us. So, as Natnael posed the question before, I'm going to say it again. What now?
What now?
What now?
What now?
What?
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye.